webinar, Dr. Lai Xiuli. Dr. Lai is an associate professor at the Faculty of Business and Economics, University Malaya, where she also earned her PhD in demography. She serves as the coordinator of the Population Studies Unit at University Malaya and is the data manager and liaison officer between University Malaya and the Department of Statistics Malaysia. Her research expertise spans demography, public and reproductive health, gender, and socio-economic studies. She is also the associate editor of the International Journal of Population Issues. With her academic background and extensive experience, Dr. Lai brings both scholarly insight and practical coordination to today's session. Finally, as the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Population Issues, I warmly encourage scholars to consider our journal as a platform for sharing research on population issues in developing countries. We welcome both empirical and conceptual contribution that advance our understanding of pressing population challenges across diverse developing countries. Now, Dr. Lai, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the welcoming remarks and kind introduction, Professor Aris. Good day to everyone. And once again, on behalf of the organizer, I warmly welcome you to this webinar on gender disparities and population aging in developing Asia. So I am live from Malaysia and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session. Today, we bring together distinguished experts who will share country-level perspectives and research insights from Thailand, Indonesia, Iran, and Sri Lanka. We are privileged to have 4 excellent speakers today, each of whom will present for about 15 minutes. After all the presentations, we will have a Q&A session. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will pose the questions to the speakers during the Q&A session. Please kindly include your name and affiliation. You can also look at the message sent by the organizing committee in the chat box for you to access to some important documents. Thank you for your cooperation, and without further ado, now let's begin. Our first speaker, we have Associate Professor Dr. Chalermpol Chamchan. He is an associate professor and the current director of the Institute for Population and Social Research, Mahidol University, Thailand. His recent works and research interests concentrate on population aging and the elderly, generational economic transfer, national transfer accounts, cross-border migration, and migrant populations in Thailand, with specific focuses on migrant health and their access to rights, health system, and health policy, and other issues relevant to population studies. Today, he would like to share with us on the gender disparities in old age income security in the context of Thailand's population aging. Prof. Chalermpol, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, all the attendants of this webinar. And thanks so much, Dr. Alice Ananta, and also Dr. Lai for the kind introduction, and also inviting me to join this panel. I try to keep it in 15 minutes. Hopefully, I can do that. But first of all, I would like to thank again the co-organizing institution, including International Journal of Population Issue, Demographic Institute of Universitas Indonesia, Department of Demography, University of Colombo, for organizing this interesting webinar and having me also in this seminar as one of the speakers to share what we might have to learn together from the context of Thailand. As already introduced, and from the Institute for Population and Social Research, Mahidol University from Thailand. And for my presentation, we talk about gender disparity, which I think there's many issues to be touched on or to be shared from our countries, which in the context of Thailand, I think one of the challenging topics is about the old age income security, which, as you might know, that talking about developing Asia countries, one of the challenges that we are facing is about not only about population aging, but more importantly, it's about the speed of becoming the ageist society. For example, in case of Thailand, just last year, we had just become what we call completely ageist society, where we have like 20% of the population aged 60 and over. So that means if you come to Thailand, And if you meet 5 Thai people, at least one of them are older person is 60 and over already, which in the next 10 years, it has been, how to say, projected that just only 10 years, we has been projected to become what we call super aged society. So at that time, the proportion of older person will increase from 20% of the total population to about 30% of the total population. So it's not only about the population aging process, but it's about the speed or the pace of the aging that make many countries in our regions become aged even before reaching the state of high-income countries. And that's why I select the issue of old age income security to be presented and shared in this webinar. So when we talk about the economic insecurity in the old age, as I already mentioned, that it is one of the critical challenge for Thailand, is for the overall older person. But if we look deeper into available data, we will find the vulnerabilities that reflect gender disparity between older men and older women on many issues. So in my presentation, mostly I just would like to compare the situation in terms of the old age income security between older men and older women. But actually, when we talk about gender, it should be covered broader than that, especially in the context of Thailand that last year we had just new legislation we call equal marriage legislation, which presents or implies to some extent more openness in terms of the LGBTQ populations. But this is another challenge in terms of the data availability that we have quite limited data available. So actually, when we talk gender disparity, actually we should explore, I mean, more than just men and female or men or women. But because of due to the data limitation in this talk and the presentation, the comparison will be mainly just only between older men and older women. So allow me to share the screen. I forgot to share this, which I mentioned already. So let I move to this one. As I already mentioned, that Thailand become completely aged society, and just only within about 9 years, we will become super aged society. So in the overall context of the population, as I mentioned that by concept, so talking about old age income security by concept, when we talk about old age income, sources of income for the elderly can be categorized into the 4 main sources. The first one can be the income from work or the labor income or income from employment. Second one, income from saving and assets, which if we use the academic term, is maybe called as the asset-based reallocation. It's like you reallocate your assets during the working age that you have surplus in terms of saving, in terms of investment, and then you can use that sources of the assets reallocation as the income source in your old age. So this is income from saving and assets. And the third one can be support from the family and relatives. In the context of many Asian countries, it can be mainly from children, which if we use academic term, we might call this source of income as the private transfer or household transfer. And the last one can be support from the governments or the public transfer, which can include public pensions, include social welfare assistance from the governments. And in the context of Thailand, from this slide, in the recent year, we found that a large number of older persons still rely mainly on income from their children. If you look at the figure here, but in this figure, I just compare between male and female, but overall pictures among Thai older person, the main source of income mainly come from their children. However, the trend has been changing. Survey results over the past decade indicated that reliance on children and family has been decreasing, while the dependence on income from work among older persons has been increasing. The main reason is that fewer people are getting married and having children. If we look at the gender difference in this figure between the pink one and the blue one, we will find that the older men tend to rely more on income from work or from employment and also from pensions. In contrast, older women tend to rely more on support from children, which is this one, and within the household. and also from the government assistance, which here is represented by the old age living allowance that the Thai government provide. These are social pensions to older person who don't have any pensions. Somehow, if we look at the amount of old age living allowance, the amount is quite limited and relatively low, and even much below than the poverty line. Based on the data from National Transfer Account in Thailand, which provide in-depth analysis to examine the proportion of economic resources that Thai people at each age use for their consumption, which presented by these figures, we found the different consumption patterns across the age group from being children, during children working age period and older person, the consumption pattern and the income sources are quite different. And also it's quite different when we compare between male and female. When considering at the old age, looking at these two bars, it is found that older men still, this one is for men, older men still have income from work that is more than twice as high as older women. So if you look at the blue bars here, which is the income from labor income, the proportions of income from work, income from employment among older men is about twice as high as women's. So it's about 46% and 21% of consumption for men and women, respectively. In addition, men have more income from saving and assets and receive more public support in terms of pension than older women. So all of this makes older men have more economic resources than the level of consumption. As you can see, the negative value here, which represents the contribution, the transfer out. It means that men has more income level than the level of their consumption, and they have ability to transfer this out to support other people or other members in the household, which we found that about 33% or minus 33% here is a net private transfer, net private intra-household that men transfer to support other member in the household. In contrast, for older women do not make transfer out to either the public or household, but rather receive positive net intra-household transfer from other household members. So this clearly reflects the income dependencies of older women on the family, being household dependent rather than household economic contributor as compared to older men. And according to the latest survey in 2024 regarding property ownership, it was found that nearly 1/3 of older women in Thailand reported having no property or asset at all, while the proportion among older men was only 15%. This clearly reflects the economic vulnerability of older women in the country as compared to the older men. Regarding the employment opportunities in the old age, which can be another significant source of income, data from the labor force survey conducted annually show that throughout their life, women participate in the labor force less than men, especially in the old age. Thai women start leaving the labor market from the age of 45, which is relatively earlier than men. From the age of 50 onwards, the labor force participation rate of women is about 15 to 20% lower than of men, which is quite great. This show a greater difference compared to the working age period, where the gap between men and women is just only about 10%. Moreover, among employed women in the Thai context, there are still wage differences between male and female workers, even within the same sector, which further reflect inequality in employment opportunities and income from work among older women compared to older men. So labor force participation, especially during the working age period, is a key factor related to pension coverage in the old age. This issue is another significant challenge in ensuring income security for the older person in Thailand, affecting both male and female workers. Overall, if you look at the overall figures, more than half of Thai workers are in informal sector, which does not provide pensions upon retirement or did not provide old age benefits when they quit the job. Although Thailand has a social pension system, which is here, as I already mentioned about old age allowance, it's a social pensions that provided by the Thai government. But the amount, the Thai government for the older person who has not any pension, which the main groups are those who informal worker in the working age, the amount is relatively low and much below the poverty lines. So the Thai government has made effort to establish an income security system, especially for the informal sector worker. They developed National Saving Fund and also Section 40 of the Social Security Fund for the informal sector, but these are voluntary based systems that do not cover all the informal sector, which if we have the data, I don't have the concrete data here, but the proportions of informal workers are more to be among women more than men if we compare by gender. So therefore, from all the presented data, it can be seen that older women in Thailand still face high risk and economic vulnerability due to the lack of adequate income security in the old age compared to older men. And compared to the older men, they are more vulnerable in several aspects, including income from work, including saving and assets, and government support, both in terms of pensions from their work and also living allowance or social pensions provided by the governments. What women can rely on more than men is economic support within the household, especially from spouse and children. So even though from the data that I presented here, women might be seen as the economic dependents, mostly economic dependent in the household. But if we look at another angles, there have been several studies attempting to account for the economic contribution of women that are not counted in the GDP or classified as the non-market contribution, particularly in the form of unpaid domestic work, including caring for household members, especially for children and elderly. Women's households work and caregiving indirectly support men to work outside the home more effectively. So this contribution can be estimated from women times usage pattern in the household care and domestic work. According to the National Time Transfer Account or the NTTA, on average, in many countries worldwide, we found that women spend 3 times more times on family care and housework compared to men. So if we can monetize this unpaid work, the family dependency pattern we see might change from women being perceived as dependents of male spouse and children to being seen as the key contributors rather than the dependents on other household member, which in case of Thailand, we have a study using the NTA methodology, but it's quite long times ago in 2004 by Dr. Mantana, which we also found that Thai women spend significantly more time on housework, on childcare, and elderly care as compared to men. Unfortunately, the National Statistics Office in Thailand, they stopped collecting or stopped doing the national survey on time use from year 2015. That's why we still cannot update this NTTA study yet in the context of Thailand. So let me go to nearly the conclusions about the key takeaways from the presentation, which I focus on income security in old age that we found gender disparity. So regarding gender disparity between older women and men in Thailand, as we found that there's a changes in population structure and also the family structure in the context of Thailand with declining fertility rates, smaller household sizes, and increasing number of single or childless people. So we can expect that in the future, the family-based support system is likely to become weaker. So therefore, considering ways to enhance or support income security for the elderly, especially older women, is an important issue. From a review of recent study, there are some policy recommendations to enhance income security for older women, which I think is can be applied both in the context of Thailand and also other developing countries. These recommendations include, for example, expanding coverage and adequacy of social pensions, because this can be a good assistance to the older women who join who didn't join the labor force during their working age, or those who joined the labor force but in the informal sector. So expanding coverage and adequacy of social pension is one of the recommendations. Second one, developing gender-responsive pension systems, such as introducing care credits for unpaid caregiving to count, the contributions of more contribution of women, which is not counted within the GDP, or in the past not monetized appropriately. And also promoting employment and job opportunity for older female workers, boosting financial literacy and saving, and social welfare policy targeting the most vulnerable older women. For example, widow women, single women in the old age. That can be another recommendation. It is essential to study the details and learn from the experiences of various countries to adapt policy appropriately to each country context. So that concludes my presentation from the experience. Just some specific issue from the context of Thailand's population aging, which I'm happy to answer any questions or receive comments and suggestions for further exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation, Professor Chalermpol. Audience, please feel free to type any questions that you have in the chat box, and we will pose it to each speaker during the Q&A session. We move on to the next presentation. Our next speaker is Assistant Professor Dr. Diahhadi Setyonaluri, also known as Ruri. She is an assistant professor and a researcher at the Faculty of Economics and Business and the Demographic Institute and Institute for Economic and Social Research, Universitas Indonesia. Her research focuses on drivers of women's economic participation and welfare in Indonesia, examining factors such as gender norms, workplace policies, social protection, and violence against women. Today, her presentation title is Growing Older, Growing Unequal, Gender and Aging in Indonesia. Prof. Ruri, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. And I would like to ask the organizer to help me to operate the slide. All right. Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you, Professor Aris Ananta, for inviting me to participate in this very important webinar. And in this occasion, I would like to present some highlights on how gender inequality evolves and accumulates over the life course, particularly in the context of aging in Indonesia. And I will draw from various data sources and studies, and to explore how both paid and unpaid work shape women experience from working age through the old age. Next slide, please. Then, as I mentioned before, so I will take the life course approach to understand the gender equality that spans over the life cycle. And in here, I argue that gender disparities are not isolated events, but rather built over the time from young age to the old age. And in here, my particular focus will be on how vulnerabilities, the gender vulnerabilities in paid and unpaid work will have an impact or will be carried over by women in the later years. Next slide. So as probably you all know, and this is also occurring in other countries, that Indonesia is entering right at the onset of the aging population or aging society phase. By 2045, the elderly population age 65 and older will reach around 45 million. Although we still see that we're going to have large population, working age population until at least 2050. And these demographic shifts will create challenges, opportunities for policy planning, particularly regarding labor participation and also caregiving across the life cycle. Next slide, please. So this framework, this is coming from the UNDP framework, This illustrates that gender inequality persists throughout the life course. And gender inequality is not just a moment in time. We're not just talking about gender, how gender is aging population, but it spans the entire life cycle from early childhood through the old age. Women consistently face disadvantages, and this begins with small gaps in education, but grows sharply in adulthood through unequal labor force participation, time spent on unpaid care, lack of representation in leadership, and gender pay gap. And these advantages do not disappear with age. Instead, they will stay there. And by old age, women are less likely to receive a pension. Then they're more likely to rely on family for support. And it shows that what happens in the youth and adulthood will be carried over into elder age, shaping the lifelong vulnerability. Next slide, please. And as we looked earlier, gender inequality builds over the life course. And one of the key driver of this is the persistent gap in the labor force participation. Indonesia continues to face a persistent gender gap in the labor market, while men's labor force participation remains quite above 80%. Women's labor force participation stagnated at under 55% for 2 or 3 last decades. And also the right-hand chart shows that what often happens when women become mothers, many leave the workforce, and for most they exit. The exit is permanent. So if you see the table on your right-hand side, among women with only secondary education, over 70% are no longer working a year after the birth of their first child. And the analysis from Cameron et al. Shows that this seems to be a permanent exit. And this permanent exit severely limit women's income security. And this lack of continuity in employment will result in, of course, greater vulnerability in the old age. Next slide, please. We see that most women never work, or when they exit from work, they do it permanently. But even when women are working, they still continue to face vulnerability. Most women, I think, they are more likely to be engaged or work in vulnerable employment. This means that they are working in jobs with no formal contracts, no social protection, no security against economic shocks. And this chart from the World Bank shows that although vulnerable employment has declined over time, women still has higher rates of being in a vulnerable employment compared to men. So in 2023, nearly 60% of working women in Indonesia were in vulnerable jobs compared to 45% of men. And the gap is not only persistent, also higher than the regional average in East Asia and the Pacific. And this condition, of course, will make women more exposed to income security throughout their lives. Slide, please. Apart from the vulnerability in paid work, women also face vulnerability in unpaid work. So I guess the pattern is similar to Thailand or other countries around the world, that women continue to shoulder the majority of unpaid domestic and care work. And although Indonesia is still not have nationally representative time use data, we did a pilot study on time use in Greater Jakarta and Surabaya. And these are the metropolitan cities in Indonesia. It shows that women, especially those with young children, carry the bulk of unpaid domestic and care work, and also work longer total hours when unpaid labor is counted. So this imbalance will reinforce gender disparities in both in paid employment and income. And as you see that men spend most of the time in paid work, around 5.3 hours, compared to 3.5 hours for women and just 2.8 hours for mothers with young children. And the biggest gap is in unpaid care work. So women in average, in total, spend 3.9 hours. But particularly those with young children spend around 8.5 hours for unpaid care work, providing care. Men only spend for around 1 hour. So you see that there's a quite a big gap in time allocation for the unpaid domestic and care work, which is not counted in our GDP. Next slide, please. Now, that was the experience from women of, at the working age population. Now we're moving out to women of tomorrow, or elderly women. Before that, I think I mentioned that we are at the onset of entering the aging population, and the amount of the proportion of elderly population is increasing. These are the proportion of elderly population across provinces. Some provinces will have a faster rate of aging population, and they will expect to have over 18% of population to be over 65 years old by 2045. So this again will mark that we need to welcoming silver generation in the workforce. Some people have used the term of silver economy. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of employment, again, there's a gender gap in labor force participation among older age group in Indonesia, and we see it across time. And we compare here between those who are pralansia, means like pre-aging, that is age 45 to 59. Men age 45-59 consistently have the highest participation, staying above around 90%. What is noteworthy is that there's like a faster, a sharp rise in participation among women aged 60 and above, from around 34% in 2010 to 43% in 2024. So I think we see that all elderly participation is growing, increasing. The growth is much steeper for older women, and this is signaling that either financial necessity, limited access to pension, or continued to work in the informal type of employment. And this trend underscores the need to rethink about the retirement and social protection policies for women who have no access to formal employment or without adequate formal support. Next slide, please. And I'm bringing the findings from the new survey on aging. It is called the Indonesia Longitudinal Aging Survey. The first wave was conducted in 2023. And it has a lot of information about the situation of economic health, also the welfare of the aging. And from this survey, one of the findings is that gender disparities still occurs. Gender disparities in employment still occur among older people. While 82% of older women work, only 58% of older women do, and just 29% have ever worked. So this is reflecting the, again, lifelong inequality. Older women are more likely to be in vulnerable roles, such as casual or family workers, which, of course, they have lack of protection and security. In contrast, older men are more likely to be self-employed or being the employers, indicating more economic autonomy. even among those nearing old age, women still also feel similar patterns. And again, this is showing that the gender labor inequalities persist right until the old age. Next slide, please. Continuing from the previous slide on the women's vulnerability in paid work, we now turn to the burden regarding the caregiving. Again, up until the old age, this is also happening across the globe, that women continue to become, to bear the brunt of the caregiving. So although the data from ILAS, or the Indonesia Longitudinal Aging Survey, show that fewer older women report caregiving for grandchildren compared to men, but these women spend significantly more time for doing caregiving. So among pre-older adults, women spend nearly twice the hours per day caring for grandchildren. When we include care for the other elderly people, the gender gap is clearer. Older women consistently spend more total hours per week on caregiving than men. So this unpaid workload, again, will limit the opportunities for paid work, and also to get to retirement planning, and also personal well-being. Next slide, please. And as we've seen, older women do much of the caregiving, and this again reinforce that caregiving itself is also gendered. If we ask who provides care, we know the answer, that is women. More than 65% of older people rely on women as their primary caregiver. What's more, nearly half of these caregivers are under age 45 in their productive years, so pre-aging. Most are daughter or spouses. And this means that caregiving not only affects women in old age, but also places a double burden on working age women who are the sandwich generation, supporting both children and also elderly family members. And the living arrangement data also shows that many older women live in the multi-generational household. Again, this will also reinforce their role as caregiver, but also as dependent within the same family structure. Next slide. So when we talk about women as the older women as the caregiver, in old age, in terms of financial support, so after spending much of their lives as caregivers, many older women find themselves still relying on others, especially their children, for income in old age. Findings from ILAS shows that while most elderly men and women have assets, women are less likely to have pensions or income from like rent or their own earnings. 76% of older women depend on transfer from the children, compared to 56% of men. And in terms of, they have savings, but the savings are modest, often in the form of receivables or small bank deposits. And if we look at the median asset, this is data from ILAS, is around 105 to 120 million. Mostly the assets are house or property. And this highlights how limited access to formal employment in the past, and also social protection will lead to financial dependency later on. Next slide, please. Now, the form of formal care services in Indonesia are also very limited. So I think this is similar to other countries in Asia, that old age care usually done by, the majority are done by family, particularly daughters or the female spouse. And for the use of formal care services are still very limited. the supply is very limited. Most care still, as I mentioned, is provided informally by families. And again, this will make it hard to balance care responsibilities with economic participation for women in sandwich generation, and also limiting those who need some care with a quality caregiving that they are needing. So there are no registry data for care services for elderly, and this report from the ADB try to compile both public and private care services, but it's again there are different types of care providers, different services, but more importantly, the coverage of these services are very limited, even for public services such as posyandu lansia or the health facilities for elderly people. Now, the next slide is my concluding slide. Is rather than concluding what I have mentioned, again, I would like to reiterate that to some policy options that we need to think using the life force and also the gender lens to address the gender vulnerabilities that we've seen across the life cycle. So first, we need to support women's lifelong employment with providing different programs, expanding reskilling programs, promoting flexible working, ensuring also the retirement policies recognize unpaid caregiving roles. Also, we need to think about more inclusive pension system, particularly women with informal or interrupted work histories, possibly by introducing non-contributory pension system, and also reducing intergenerational care burden is the key through investment in affordable care particularly for women. And social assistance must better reach vulnerable older women, including those who are living alone. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Terima kasih. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Muri, for sharing your expertise. We have received a few questions from the Q&A chat box, but I will pose it to you during the Q&A session. Let's move on to the next presentation. We have our third speaker, Professor Dr. Fatemeh Torabi. She is a professor of demography at the University of Tehran, where she previously led the Department of Demography and currently serves as Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Her research focuses on family demography, marriage, fertility, household structures, and gender studies in Asian and Muslim societies, with a particular emphasis on Iran. Today, she would like to share with us on the gender realities of aging in Iran, a demographic perspective. Prof. Fatemeh, the floor is yours.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. And before I start, I would like to thank the organizers of the webinar and especially Professor Aris for getting us together for these insightful talks. Can I ask you to share my presentation? Thank you. In this presentation, I will discuss the gender realities of aging in Iran with a special focus on some preliminary findings from the latest time use survey in Iran. Next, please. As some of you may know, Iran has undergone a sharp fertility decline between the mid-1980s and the mid-1990s. Some say it's been the most rapid fertility decline, one of the most rapid fertility declines in the world. The country has experienced an under-replacement fertility level for the past 2 decades, which has resulted in a reversal of population policy in Iran from an anti-natalist to a pro-natalist population policies. And as you can see here, the total fertility rate in Iran has been lower than in Asia and Southern Asia for more than 2 decades now. Next slide, please. The fertility decline followed the mortality decline and a continued rise in the life expectancy at birth. As you can see, the life expectancy at birth in Iran is around 75 years and has surpassed both Asia and Southern Asia since the 1990s. Next, please. And not surprisingly, as a result of these trends, the age structure of the population has profoundly changed. The number of older persons is on the rise. And in almost a decade, we surpassed the number of those aged less than 25. You can see the red line and the green line. The purple line will surpass both in a maybe decade or so. Thank you. The next slide, please. And as of today, more than 1 in 10 Iranians are 60 years or more. So more than 10% of the population are now aged 60 years or more. And this figure will continue to increase in the future, as you observe here. Next slide, please. Declining fertility rates and increased life expectancy has contributed to a growing elderly demographic, particularly among women who tend to outlive men. You can see here in this slide that the number of women, elderly women, are greater than elderly men in Iran, and it will continue to be the same. And as you can see, the ratio of female to male is 1.04, and it will be slightly higher in the next few years. So it's important to focus on the issues regarding women who are among the older persons. Next slide, please. Older women are often more vulnerable than older men, as probably Chalermpol and Rory mentioned in their presentations. For instance, in Iran, women face lower lifetime earnings and limited pension access, as shown by the existing research. In other words, social security policies influence retirement age and benefit eligibility, which can disproportionately affect women because they have lower lifelong earnings, as previous speakers mentioned too. And also there are gender disparities due to lower lifetime earnings and employment interruptions, which creates challenges for pension system. As you may know, in Iran, the proportion of women who participate in the labor force is very low, around 16% of women who are 15 years or more participate in the labor force. So despite a great expansion in education, the proportion of women who participate in labor force is still low. Next slide, please. And women are also more vulnerable than men to financial insecurity in old age. Many of the older adults without a pension are women because they have not participated in the labor force earlier in their life, which makes them more vulnerable to economic hardship, which has been shown has been created exacerbated by economic sanctions in Iran. The aging population exacerbates financial insecurity, particularly for women. So the population dynamics and age structure changes itself exposes women to more hardship, economic hardship, and because they have, as I mentioned, have lower lifetime earnings and pension benefits. Next slide, please. And older women are also different from older men in their living arrangements. Although living with a spouse and children is the dominant form of living arrangements, women are significantly more likely to live with extended family members. This type of living arrangement has been shown, of course, to benefit older women in Iran by extending the support they receive. But the prevalence of solo living has also increased among older women, which creates certain challenges for these women because it's not been a very popular or dominant form of living arrangements, particularly for older women in Iran. Next slide, please. As Ruri mentioned, gender time use is a very important, I think, a tool for us to see gendered patterns of role behaviors. We have seen in Iran that time is a gendered resource. Gendered roles reduce older women's access to leisure with health or social implications. Next slide, please. Using the time use data, the latest one, which has been conducted in 2019-2020, representing urban areas of Iran, we can see that more than 1/3 of the daily time of the urban population is spent on sleeping, which is equal to more than 8 hours per day. And is similar to what has been observed around the world. It's followed by leisure activities, almost 4.2 hours per day, household work, 3.29 hours per day, paid work, 2.75, less than 3 hours per day, and socializing and volunteering activities, which is also less than 2 hours per day. Next slide, please. As we can see here, this pattern, the pattern of work and family activities varies between individuals with different characteristics. Here I show the male-female differences by caregiving status, by being an older person or not being an older person, by marital status, and living alone or with other family members or other people. So as you can see, men are 8 times more likely than women to participate in paid work, which is consistent with what we have previously seen in Iran. Women, on the other hand, are 5 times more likely than men to engage in housework. Women also spend more time than men on socializing and volunteering activities and sleeping, whereas men spend more time on leisure and sport activities. Caregivers spend more time only on household work, which is not surprising. And older persons tend to spend more time on socializing, leisure, and sleeping. Married individuals spend more time only on household work, not any other activity. And those who live alone spend more time on all activities than those who are not, except for paid work. Next slide, please. And there is quite a variation those who are older than these people. We can see that gender disparities persist over the old age spectrum. Gender differences in participation in paid work and household work both diminishes as we move toward older ages. You can compare people who are 60 to 64 years old to those who are 75 or older. But other activities show a persistent pattern throughout the old ages. Next slide, please.
Prof. Fatemeh, are you still on the line? We cannot hear you.
Internet problem.
Yeah, I think because of the unstable connection, it is also heavy rain in Kuala Lumpur now. Perhaps shall we move on to the next presentation? Okay, I think let's move on to the next presentation. So we have our next speaker, Professor Dr. Manori Weeratunga. She is a professor in demography at the Faculty of Arts, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. She also serves as a visiting professor in the School of Computer, Data and Mathematical Sciences at Western Sydney University, Australia. Additionally, she is the director of the Centre for Aging Studies at the University of Colombo and currently serves as the president of the Population Association of Sri Lanka. Her key areas of expertise include aging, fertility, mortality, migration, and applied demography. Today, her presentation title is Bridging the Gap, a demographic overview of gender disparities in the aging population of developing Asia and Sri Lanka. Professor Weeratunga, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lee, for the nice introduction. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Actually, first of all, distinguished participants, first of all, I would like to thank Professor Aris Anantha for inviting me for this very useful presentation and the useful webinar. This is a timely topic, and actually together, isolate the different countries, that together as a region, we need to get together to find out some solution for this important issue. And so actually I must thank very first Professor Aris Anantha and also the Director, Demographic Institute, Faculty of Economic and Business, University of Indonesia, and the Head Department of Demography, Faculty of Arts, University of Colombo, and the Population Association of Sri Lanka and the Journal of Population Issues for organizing this event. Actually, so I am coming here as the fourth presenter. So when you come to this position, so you all know that actually you have already realized about this the issue, how that issue is large and the gravity of the issues, the gender disparities in developing Asia, especially those speakers mainly focus on the country experiences, Indonesia, Iran, and Thailand. So my approach is a little bit different from these three speakers, because I wanted to I want to discuss the macro level overview, like bringing the developing Asia experiences, as well as comparing with developed Asia situation, and also taking some of the example from the Sri Lankan context. So now actually when you come to this position, so as I mentioned earlier, so you know the gravity of issue. So what I have realized from the, all the presentation and also all the literature and the information available so far. So now there is a rapid aging, especially in Sri Lanka, rapid aging, and also with minimum preparation for that issue, like to address that issue. So the rapid aging, and also in the same time, the feminization of aging, because of like elderly women living longer time than men, rather like elderly women outlive elderly men. So some things like this. And also the main issue that I have find from here is like increase in the 80+ population. So we have to think about that because in the 80+ population, there is a large female population. So we have to think about that also. So today, actually, I want to share my thoughts about like, so as I mentioned, bridging the gap, addressing gender disparities in the aging population of developing Asia and Sri Lanka. So I brought this topic to address the gender disparities among the aging population and come up with recommendations about to ensure older women are not left behind just because they live longer, had fewer chance during their working lives. Because when you listen to all the other three presentations, so we found there are limited access for the working to actually enjoy the working life for the older women. So I have brought here information from the SCAP sub-region. So because you can see by 2016, the proportion of elderly population in each region, and also by 2050. So what we can actually realize from those information, although it's not very in detail information, in the developing Asia, rapid and ongoing, often without advocate preparation. So elderly women are more vulnerable. So you found it from the previous presentations also. When compare with the developed Asia, so the reason why I have brought here the developed Asia, because the Asian region, so there are different countries, different level of economic development, and also we can, for example, if you take Japan, Singapore, so they have a quite good models compared to developing countries in developing Asia. So therefore, so I compare the situation between developing Asia and the developed Asia to get some example from them. So in developed Asia, the situation is already aging steadily with long-term planning, equal opportunities for elderly men and women. So when we come to the Sri Lankan experience, so Sri Lanka is experiencing the rapid aging. So among the South Asian countries, so it's a rapid, because of that rapid aging. So Sri Lanka is experiencing several issues, and also there is a rapid increasing of the older women. So now I have brought here one of the important aspects. Here, average number of years a woman lives alone after a husband death in selected Asian countries. I have brought here not only Sri Lanka, so some of other Asian countries, as our first speaker clearly mentioned. So we have some data gaps also. But however, within the available data, we can actually understand about the clear picture about the issue of the situation. So gender dimension of population, and we can identify from this, because the difference, when we take the difference between the life expectancy at birth from men and women. And also here, average, so we can clearly see the average number of years a woman lives alone after husband death. So that is the more crucial part, because so to understand this situation, I need to move to the other sides also, because and also we can take some example from previous presentations, because income security, low pension schemes. So there are several things like so they are working, but they don't get any economic value for their work. So those are the common things, like when you listen to the previous presentations, common issues in the developed Asia. So here, older women are less likely to have income security and are often discriminated against due to their limited access to resources and opportunities, including healthcare, adequate housing, social protection, and legal justice. In case of widowhood and divorce, this vulnerability is exacerbated even further and may also result in violence, neglect, abuse, and other maltreatment. So that's what we need to understand, because this is not just older people, older women living longer, because they are facing several issues. Some issues actually it's really difficult for us to understand because we have limited data, especially in terms of abuse and maltreatment. So some of the things actually we can understand. However, so we have to go for in-depth studies in different, like in each country, to understand the gravity of the issue. So when we take the differences between developed and the developing Asia, So in developing Asia, so more pronounced due to higher female longevity and lack of support system. So when you look at the gap in Sri Lanka also, it's higher, and developed Asia, it's also present. So this gap also present, but somewhat they are cushioned by stronger social system. So that is the difference. And here about the labor force participation, including Sri Lanka, and of selected some of the Asian countries. So you saw the similar patterns in other Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Iran also. So there is a gender gap. So that is the main reason, and for all the women are facing several difficulties because they don't have much income security. So the gender gap in developing Asia has a significant gender gap in the labor force, with males having a higher participation rate than females. In Sri Lanka, male labor force participation is almost double than the female labor force participation. And also when it comes to among the 60 plus age group, participation drops further, with only 12.9% of all the women engaged in the workforce. Another important issue, although I have not brought some information here, although like they are engaged in some work during their old age, what type of work they do? So whether those work are suitable for them. So like usually most of the older people, they work during the young old age, 60 to 70. So they work hard, still they have strength to work, but they don't care about their health because they have very poor income, and so they are living with several issues. So therefore they don't mind about their physical fitness or the mental fitness, how the long that as far as they can do, like they do. But after that, what will happen when we move to the 80 plus or the oldest age group? They are suffering from those things. So therefore, although it's nice, sometimes the statistics here, like some of the proportions, those who are working, engaging in any kind of work. But anyway, type of work also very important. Among those who are economically able, many are involved in informal and that's what I wanted to highlight. Unsuitable work that may not be safe or appropriate for their age and health. And also, older women, most older women are not active and depend on their spouse or children for financial support. Widowed older women in particular face significant economic hardship as they often have little or no income in later life. So this is about, like those who are married. So there is a percentage in each country, even in Sri Lanka, those who never marry. So what is the situation about those populations? So all the population we have to think about. So they are most vulnerable if they don't have a proper income. So now it is about pension and income security. Pension and income security, and also I have brought here statutory coverage, mandatory and voluntary contributory pension scheme in the Asia Pacific region. It's based on the latest available year. So you can see the difference. So if you take the developed Asia, take example from Japan, so no difference. Okay, so if you take Sri Lanka, and if you take Nepal, so and also when you take as a whole, the pension and income security, it's very low pension and income security in developing Asia. Okay, so and also from that, the pension and the income security for older women also very less than the older men. And when we take Sri Lanka, it's nearly half of the older elderly women have been affected. So now this is, I have taken this is from the use of National Time Trans account to address gender-based inequalities in Sri Lanka. Actually, I think almost all three speakers also use this NTTA to recognize about this gap and what type of work that they have been doing. Like, see, now when you take the figure in your left-hand side, what you can see, there's a huge gender gap. With the time spent on employment-related activities by gender. So this is the very, this is the area that we have to think about, because it doesn't mean that all the people are not, all the women are not active. they do lots of contribution to the society, and also in the context of the Asian region. So they are actually working as the pillars of the multi-generational families sometimes. But the very unfortunate thing is whether although they support for their family, whether they take equal support when they are moving to the old age, because they are the pillars of the multi-generational family. So that is proven by several literature. So in Sri Lanka, women's work is often undervalued, with many women engaged in non-economic or unpaid activities. Although their contributions have economic value, they are rarely recognized or counted in official statistics. Actually, if they can, actually, we have to think about this, whether like how we can give a recognition for their work. So why we neglect them? So they are contributing, like sometimes they are contributing more than men. So, but anyway, it is not recognized because of the social, cultural, and some behaviors of the developed Asia. However, developing Asia, however, developed Asia is much better. So therefore, we can take some example from those countries. So then now moving to the economic dependency. Why its economic dependency is there? So when we move to the previous slide, so we can understand. So they have the low female labor force participation, low pensions. So income security is very low. So therefore they are like, although they are contributing to the society in a large level, but when they are moving to old age, what is happening? Economic dependency. So therefore, that is really bad, and we need to, and actually all the countries and should think about this as a region. We have to stand for this to ensure the all the women's dignity and their happiness. So they are not very happy, although I have not taken the very in-depth information here, but this is the issue. So in developing Asia, high dependency on family and limited autonomy for elderly women. So when compared with developed Asia, greater financial independence among older women. So it's the same region, different scenarios in developed Asia and the developing Asia. So why don't you open our eyes to like at least to bring closer, at least to bridge in the gap between these gender disparities by taking the very good example from developing Asia. So the reason for that economic dependency, low lifetime earnings. So they do lots of work, but ultimately no earning for them, and limited access to pension. So gender discrimination. So it's also happening. It's really difficult to sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, to find out some, statistics. However, if you take, the literature or the country example, so it's happening. Health issues, like since older women are living longer, they are actually suffering from multiple illnesses. So therefore, health issues are large, and cultural expectations. So therefore, cultural expectation to the mother, like so they can't change their behavior. So then they live with they don't live with dignity as happiness. So those are like to some extent, so those things should be changed to give the better life for the older women. Interrupted work histories, so they can't actually continuously work because they have to sacrifice their jobs for their kids. So once, ultimately, when they get older, can they get that same support from their kids or a family? That is the question. And widowhood, low education level, it's different populations, lack of social protection programs, and poor financial literacy. That is also there because it's a macro level experience of the developing Asia. So elderly women in Sri Lanka face greater economic vulnerability than men, largely due to incomplete work histories, lower lifetime earnings, and persistent gender discrimination. These factors contribute to high levels of economic dependency in old age, especially for widows and those without family support. Studies show that biological, social, and cultural differences further increase their risk of poverty and social exclusion, making it essential to examine and address the unique challenges faced by this group. So another thing, so we are discussing about, we are comparing, we are deciding feminization of aging is there by taking life expectancy at birth. Okay, so there is a gender the gap between males and females like here. So when we take health adjusted life years, but because I have not given here like it's not the according to the gender, there's a separately, but anyway at as a whole like for the all the population. However, there is a different. Okay, so gender disparities in health expectancy in Sri Lanka. Particularly, both elderly men and women experience poor health and disability as they age, with older women more likely to face longer periods of ill health. Because when we take the information, the statistics, so there are several like all the population are facing any kind of disease. So it's really hard to find a person who 70 plus and all without any health disability. So therefore, that is one of major issues. So when the older women are living longer, so they have to suffer anyway very long time with bad health. So most of developing Asia is even like sometimes the issue in developed Asia also, because people are suffering from several sicknesses, experiencing morbidity expansion with people living longer but spending more years in poor health. Okay, so that is why, so this should actually, this aspect should brought into the the policy attention. People live in mobility expansion, then we enjoy when people living longer with several health issues. So what we have heading towards, so there is a growing need to shift towards morbidity compression, promoting healthier aging and reducing the time spent with illness or disability. So that is what we need to think about. So when older women are living longer, and when they are suffering from several diseases, so then until they die, they have to suffer. So what is the situation? What is our responsibility? So we have to think about that. We are as actually responsible person, this who can actually contribute to the policy making. So we need to think about those things. And also there is a gender disparities in healthcare access. There's a difference again between the developing Asia and the developed Asia. In the developing Asia, in advocates, especially for rural or poor elderly women, minimal geriatric care. So now in Sri Lanka, in the case now, the geriatric care is developing. However, but main concern is whether like they focus on the gender focus. They have actually policies, inclusive policies for both male and female. But when it comes to the practical scenario, it will happen. So that is the issue. So therefore, those disparities are coming as a result of unequal access to healthcare services, economic dependency. We have already discussed those things. Disparities in health literacy, ineffective implementation of gender-sensitive policies, cultural and social norms, underrepresentation in health policy, insufficient support for the victims of gender-based violence, healthcare provider bias and discrimination. So moving to these slides, widowhood and social isolation. Social isolation is a very big issue now. However, when we talk about this social isolation, because now there is a different family type. So most of our, three speakers actually already brought about the living arrangement of all the population. Now there is increase in number of living alone and also living alone. And like there are certain cases that although they are living with their parents, so those are like not like the bonds with the children and the elderly parents are very minimal. So like that, those are according to the literature available. So however, in developing Asia, the widowhood and socializations are high prevalence, limited support and strong social stigma. Traditional norms often marginalize older women, especially widows. Developed Asia, better social services and less stigma and greater social inclusion, more progressive gender norms, though some cultural biases remain, because still this is the Asian region, although those countries are developed, still the cultural biases remains in some of the other developed Asian countries also. So then when it comes to the challenges faced by older women in widowhood and isolation, they are facing emotional and psychological distress. So this is very big issue at the moment, and financial insecurity. So if they are financially secured, so most of the things can be solved actually. So that's what we have to think about. We have to actually prioritize the issues. And social stigma and discrimination, health neglects, because health neglect sometimes, like, so after COVID-19 also, I got some experience, so I did some, the research, some areas in Sri Lanka. So after COVID-19, and currently Sri Lanka is having, experiencing the economic crisis also. There's economic hardship is there, in the country itself. So that's why, so they, although they want to take medicine, they neglect. Okay, but because they neglect, so they are trying to take, like not the, some kind of traditional medicine, and then they avoid taking proper medicine. So what will happen? So when they move to 80+ age, so they can still live, but with several difficulties. So they don't understand, because usually, because if there is a financial issue at home, still, although the older women are, they are in the older stages, so they sacrifice their happiness to other family members. So that is the situation. And increased care burden, because now actually it has become as a must, and also the lack of legal awareness. And there are several things. Studies show that in Sri Lanka, over 30% of elderly women face issues related to widowhood and social isolation. These challenges are particularly prevalent among women aged 80 and above, and this number is expected to rise rapidly in the coming years. So where do current policies stand? So that is my main concern, okay? And so in the developing Asia, aging and gender are often treated separately, weak implementation. However, in developed Asia, integrated aging and gender policies with stronger enforcement. I think time is running. Okay, so I can see from Lee, he wanted to stop me. Okay, so I quickly go to give me a few seconds. Yeah, I can see your face. What should be done to bridge the gap in gender disparities among the aging population? I have given the several solutions. So if you all are willing, all the participants, I can share. So I will just read, in a point form, to give focus attention to the gender-related aspect of aging and take appropriate action. Ensure policies and programs consider the evolving needs of individuals across all life stages. Foster collaboration between government agencies and community stakeholders, because developing Asia, the government itself cannot alone face this issue. Strengthen and expand systems that support long-term care needs. Focus on increasing the number of years lived free from illness or disability. Increase labor force participation. So those are the suggestions actually, so I can make. So moving to the conclusion, as developing Asia and Sri Lanka continue to age. So we know that the intersection of gender and aging must not be overlooked. Women, particularly in old age, face unique social, economic, and health-related challenges that require targeted, inclusive, and sustainable solutions. So therefore, need to understand it is time to move from awareness to action. Not awareness, just to action. Through stronger policies, inclusive services, and the whole of society commitment to dignity, equality, and well-being in old age. So let's work together to ensure that aging is not just about living longer, but living better for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Manori, for sharing your expertise. Can we give 5 minutes to Professor Fatemeh to continue with her presentation and provide her view on the gender realities of aging in Iran?
Thank you. So can I ask you to continue from when my presentation was interrupted? It was slide, I think, 14. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for my I'm sorry for the internet disconnection earlier. So I was telling you that When we see the daily time used by sex and caregiving status of older persons in urban areas of Iran, we see gender differences in time use patterns by caregiving status. Men are much more likely than women to spend time on paid work, as you can see at the bottom of the graphs, especially those who do not provide care. Women are much more likely to provide household services, particularly those who provide care too. Caregiving substantially reduces socializing activities of women, not men, who appear to do more socializing when they provide care. And men spend substantially more time on leisure activities, as you can see on the orange parts, and caregiving reduces this time slightly, unlike women, whose leisure time substantially reduces when they provide care. And men lose more sleeping hours than women when they provide care. So women compromise their leisure, men compromise their sleeping when they do provide care. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of marital status, here we can see gender differences in time use patterns. Men are much more likely than women to spend time on paid work, regardless of their marital status. Women are much more likely to provide household services, and this time reduces for both when they are married. Women tend to spend more time socializing, although gender differences are smaller than in other categories. The difference is wider for married older persons. Men spend substantially more time on leisure, and being married increases the time that both men and women spend on leisure activities. And women spend slightly more time sleeping regardless of their marital status than men. Next slide, please. And finally, we can see gender differences in time use patterns by living arrangements. Men are much more likely than women to spend time on paid work here too, and this difference is sharper for those who are not living alone. Women are much more likely to provide household services, and the difference is larger for those who are not living alone and probably living with other family members. Women tend to spend more time socializing, especially those who live alone. And men spend substantially more time on leisure, especially those who do not live alone. Living arrangements so does not change the leisure time of women. Women who do not live alone spend slightly more time sleeping, unlike solo living women who sleep slightly less hours than solo living men. Next slide, please. Okay, the results, I run some multivariate regression models to see how these variables are associated with a different time use activities. The results of multivariate regression models can highlight the role of these features in predicting role engagement. As you can see in the first row, age is negatively associated with paid work, household work, and socializing, but positively associated with leisure and sleeping time. As people get older, they tend to do more leisure and sleeping. Women are less likely to spend time on paid work, leisure, and sleep, and more likely to spend time on household activities, even after accounting for the role of other variables. Caregiving reduces engagement in paid work, leisure, and sleep, but is positively associated with household work. Living alone reduces time spent on leisure, but is positively associated with household work and socializing. It's very interesting because 40% of the variation in household work is explained only with these variables, which is interesting. Next slide, please. Okay, I think realizing what other speakers says and many similarities that there was in the speaking in what the speaker says, there is a need for a multi-dimensional approach to address the vulnerability of older women. So we need to account for social, economic, geographic, and cultural factors at the individual and contextual level. We had limited times here, but we know that many Asian countries have so much subnational diversities according to the ethnicity, geographic provinces, and everything else in access to healthcare, in so many factors related to gender disparities in aging. The need for compressing longitudinal data is also important. In Iran, we have a national document for elderly persons, but we still lack comprehensive data for monitoring their need and their behavior roles, everything else related to them. So next slide, please. We can name some targeted policy interventions, as other speakers mentioned too. For example, enhancing the economic security of older women by expanding pension coverage, which I mentioned is not very good in Iran, adjusting pension formulas to cover more older women, addressing household work inequality, promoting shared domestic responsibility. As I mentioned, there is a wide gender gap in household activities and caregiving in Iran. We can subsidize home assistance programs. Public awareness campaigns can help to address this issue. Expanding leisure and socializing opportunities is very important. We need age-friendly urban spaces, especially in countries whose culture probably limit women from many activities, and they need to have some sort of private or gender-friendly areas for doing their sport or leisure activities. We need women's community networks more and more, and lifelong learning programs to help especially older women socialize more quickly and effectively, and strengthening institutional support for aging women, which with improved healthcare access and intergenerational support programs, because as you mentioned, in many other Asian countries, we still have a long way to go to have perfect, I can say, institutional support for elderly and especially older women. With that, I conclude my presentation, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Professor Fatemeh, and thank you to all of our speakers for the great presentations. We will now move on to the Q&A session. We will take around 10 to 15 minutes to answer the questions from the audience. Before we move on to address the questions typed in the Q&A chat box, I would like to welcome a lineup of panelists to facilitate further discussion. We have Dr. Kumudika Boyagoda from Sri Lanka, Dr. Harishndra Yakandawala from Sri Lanka, Professor Sunitra Pereira from Sri Lanka, Dr. Idiva Gadi Kamal Wisana from Indonesia, Professor Sri Moti Ningish Diotomo from Indonesia, and Dr. Evi Novida Arifin from Brunei.
Thank you. May I speak?
Definitely.
Yes. Yes. I'm Kumudika Boyagoda, Head Department of Demography, University of Colombo. Thank you everyone for this very insightful and productive session, for which we as the Department of Demography has also taken part in. I would especially like to thank the Demographic Institute of University of Indonesia, Professor Aris Ananta, and all the speakers from Thailand, Indonesia, Iran, and Sri Lanka for this collaboration. I think the demographic issues that we as countries face today needs solutions not in isolation, but jointly. So this sort of endeavor where we can come together academically is very important. Further, I think in finding practical solutions to our problems, we also need country cooperation and partnerships. So therefore, I think this session is a good starting point where the 4 countries can work together and maybe expand our networks. That is what I want to say first. Second, we have the very informative, interesting presentations. I want to thank you all again. The speakers has enlightened us how vulnerable the older aged women are. This is because they are most of the time economically dependent, socially isolated, and their work is not recognized. While I think we should address this immediate and very pressing need of the elderly from a gender perspective, I would also like to say that our equal attention should also fall on the female population or women who would be entering the aged category in the near or relatively distant future. Because from the presentations we have seen, due to the cultural context, similarities that we share, it is very unlikely that in the very near future, these contexts would change. Women will be burdened with childcare, together sandwiched between elderly and the children, together with elderly care. Their unpaid work is going to be unrecognized, and they are very likely to be dependent. So while we address the pressing aging issue at present, we, from a gender perspective, should always also look at how the future elderly women are empowered. Therefore, I think our focus should lie how to recognize and value and support the women who would be entering the elderly category in the future also. So I would also like, if you have time, for the speakers to share their views on how we as each country specifically can address these questions, how to empower the future elderly women, and also how a discussion where we as countries from very similar context in one way can share ideas and policy initiatives so that our future elderly female population is not as dependent and as vulnerable as the current elderly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumudika. I would also like to welcome Dr. Harish Chandra from Sri Lanka to say a few words.
Yep. Thank you very much for allowing me to give my thoughts, and congratulations and thank you all the presenters presenting a lot of information. I observed there are a lot of similar experiences by all the presenters, and same time actually I observed Chamchan from Thailand and Professor Manori from Sri Lanka. There are some issues that I want to highlight, because the women live longer, and women live longer after their husband's death, and they are economically dependent. And we have some other issues in Sri Lanka, migration, and how the migration of children affect mostly the older women, and especially the dementia, because I am a practitioner as well, and how that affect the families and how their well-being and their quality of life. All those things are in there for us to answer. We have policies, we have strategies, and all those things are there, but still poor support from the government and other sectors to look after all the women and men in Sri Lanka, especially women. And we have seen there are a lot of positive points from other countries in the region, plus even in our country. So how we can put together and develop some strategies for the future and to advocate the policymakers to look after the future of all the people in the country. So we are expecting more and more all the people in the future, next maybe about next 50 years and in the line. Plus, we are going to expect more women in this slot. So this is something that for us to think and just research and identify the problems and recommend for the policymakers.
Thank you, Dr. Haris Chandra. Can I also have Professor Sunitra from Sri Lanka to provide your view?
Yes, thank you. So it was a very informative session. Thank you, Professor Aris, organizing such a wonderful session. So by listening to all speakers from different perspectives, so I really realized that the addressing, the aging issue is going to be very unique for each and every country. Because when it comes to older population, in terms of size, even we say in terms of proportion is going to be similar in some contexts that you have already elaborated. But the issues are concerned so very much, trigger when it comes to the size of the elderly population. For an example, for Indonesia, I think already mentioned about their elderly population is going to be more than 48 million in the future. So then that is also going to be real. But when it comes to the countries like us, so we have just only 5 million. So maybe so other countries also you have similar challenges in addressing in terms of size. So another the point I just want to make it so I think so Professor I think Chalermpol already mentioned from the Thai context how all the women so are vulnerable in terms of because of the economy, so and their viability of. But in the future, because he was talking about the uncertain future, because currently the all the Asian countries that you spoke about, we have very community-based or family-based system. So how we are going to address, because moving from family-based, because I think main argument that made by Professor Chalermpol, so in the future, the family-based support system is not viable and also it's hard to sustain. So in that context, so we should address how we are going to address this aging related issues in the future with the social transition and this economic transition context. So my third aspect is when it comes to policy, it sometimes it's very difficult to develop a kind of framework that can address the elderly women or elderly men. Say that today our topic is elderly women's issues, because the framework in the sense it is easier to address saying that macro levels or developed and developing countries have more or less similar features. But when it comes to because in the socio and cultural settings, that is not not going to be an easy task, because I know from Indonesian case, so they have socio-economical cultural integration in addressing women-related issues that been very successful. But I think so if we can, if you, it is really good that you come together and thinking in terms of developing a very common frame so that can apply to everywhere. But that can place within the life course approach, I think so that would be really, going to be a viable solution in the future. I really like that the, Professor Ruri, actually from Indonesia, so you have you have brought in the life course perspective. I think it's really good if we can. So from Iran, Fatima, I think so you have brought about the lower, lifetime earning and the needs for multidimensional approaches to address aging related issues, especially feminization of aging. I think so that is also very much necessary, because single perspective is not sometimes support, because disease aging is going to be a multi-dimension. I think so. I think in our fourth speaker, Manori, actually, she wanted to compare developed and developing, how the aging issue. But when it comes to developed countries, the economic, capacities and all the resources are concerned. So it is still they are they are struggling with the different models. I think developing countries is still, we need to get together in order to address aging related issues. Remember that each country need to think about their unique model in their socio-cultural context. I think, thank you very much. Very insightful present. Congratulations to everyone again. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sunitra. And Dr. Eddie, do you have a few words to say?
Hi. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. First of all, I'm happy to see all of you here on the screen and see again here, and we're talking about issue on aging population and gender and aging. So first of all, I would like to say a few things. First, I think with all this one of the things is that we need to celebrate. Aging population is a celebration. So that first of all, we need to celebrate this, what we are discussing today and in the future, in terms of the issue, whatever the issue related to aging population, that we need to celebrate for this one. And I think all the presenter highlighting to a certain degree in terms of the vulnerability faced by the older woman in 4 different contexts: Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Iran. And from all this presentation, I have seen that there is a consistent theme in the way that lifelong gender inequalities compound to affect a woman's well-being in old age, particularly regarding with the economic security, social support, and also caregiving responsibilities. So in all these cases, the 4 countries, older women are shown to have less economic independence compared to men, and often also relying on family and also minimal support from the state. So that while all these economic and social vulnerabilities already well highlighted, perhaps a more nuanced discussion of how cultural norms shape aging and gender disparities that would be strengthened under analysis. In particular, maybe presenter can share or enlighten us on how do the local belief or local culture about gender role impact policy implementation in narrowing the gap. Because that's one of the things I like from what Prof. Manori said, living longer, well, living better. So now how we see our future. Now we talk about this and we are going to see our future in whether we can have living longer with living better. That what I would I would like to hear from the presenter. And the other thing, a very particular thing that from what Dr. Fatemeh explained in the case for Iran, which actually there are many things that women especially do more household work. That if you can enlighten me, what kind of household work here? If it's that really more on household work, whether there is in Iran, is there any helper who can be hired to help women in old age, for example, to reduce the burden on doing household work? So this kind one of the things, and the other one, what I would like to see whether in the future, especially looking at what's happening in the younger generation, is there any trend that in the future we will see a narrowing gap in terms of gender inequality for the future of the people? So thank you so much for this session. I learned a lot from 4 different countries, Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Iran. Then we need to work more on this and keep discussing about aging related issue. Thank you so much for this opportunity and congratulations to all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Abby. We also have a few questions from the chat box specifically for the Indonesian experience. Perhaps we can get Prof. Ruri to answer them first. The first question is on the NTA calculation. And the second one is regarding the culture in Indonesia, as well as in Thailand, where filial piety is highly valued. Children are expected to care for the elderly, and placing them in nursing homes is often considered whether it is a taboo, and how should the government formulate policies amidst this dilemma? Perhaps Prof. Ruri, you can help to answer these 2 questions.
Thank you, Xiaoli, and thank you for the questions, also the comments from the panelists. The NTA calculation, from what I know, that the last NTA was calculated based on 2005 National Socioeconomic Survey. At the moment, the government is trying to produce another NTA. However, it's still under development. But the last one, I think based on the 2005 SUSNAS, has produced, the calculation sort of like demographic dividend up to 2012. I think for more information, I think we can look at the Bappenas or the National Development Planning reports. For the filial piety, this is also the question from Professor Pereira, and also maybe also the comment from Ibu Evi. I think that's the biggest challenge for providing, for the policy related to provide, long-term care and also care facilities for the elderly. I think this is a problem for not just for Indonesia, but also for Asia in general. So I guess one of the things that should be done is continuing with the initiative to provide the facilities, the care facilities, starting from like the short-term daycare centers that, where the elderly can have more activities in there, but also be in mind when providing the facilities, it should also be provided with a good quality and good standards. So then people would see that there is a good quality facilities over there, and it will, it will shift the norms, or also the culture, related to putting the elderly in the care facility. So I guess if you're talking about changing norms, it will be a long term, but it can be done by providing, the care with good quality that can change the, the mindset or the norms about the care facilities itself. I think that's my answer. Thank you, Xiaoli.
Thank you so much, Prof. Ruby. Perhaps we move on to the other speakers to respond to the comments given by the panelists, as well as one key takeaway message to the audience. Maybe we start with Prof. Chalermpol.
Thank you very much also for the questions and also reflection from the discussion and from the participants. I would like to also respond to the issue of filial piety that's already raised to Indonesia and also to Thailand. I think the action that will be needed from the government is how to make sure that they can relieve the burden shouldered by the family. And one of the things that Dr. Ruri mentioned is about long-term care, because this can be the big burden to the family to take care of them. At least what the government can do is to help or relieve in terms of the financial burden. Talking about Thailand, as you might know that Thailand, we have achieved the universal health coverage many years ago. And I think about 5 to 6 years ago, we implemented another benefit called long-term care benefit that they want to support the community where in the local government to provide long-term care service to dependent people in the community. So I think to set up the system, especially the long-term care insurance system, long-term care social welfare system, to relieve that burden will be really helpful already. And the other approach that I mentioned about community-based, I completely agree with Dr. Sunetra that she mentioned that family-based support system is weakening. So another option is to strengthen the community-based support system. So maybe for the last concluding remark as well from me, I think today we discussed a lot about the gender disparity. We have seen many, problems, which there's many common issue, common concern, from the speaker and also from the discussants. If possible, I think maybe for the next webinar, if we're gonna have, maybe discuss more about gender empowerment. Because I think one of our discussants raised this issue. I think it can be one of the solutions that will be very interesting and very useful for the next webinar for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Chalermpol. Now we move on to Professor Fatemeh.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful webinar and for the questions and reflections. Yes, about Professor Ivi's question that how can older women in Iran get help? Yes, there are growing number of private service providers for household services, but there is also this issue of trust, and if if the household can trust strangers to come to their house to do the help. But yeah, it's really important, especially as we know that in old ages there are health issues when people want to do the housework, for example, cleaning, cooking, everything else. There is the issue of falling and breaking the there are so many health issues that should be considered, and about this narrowing gap in gender disparities that was mentioned. I'm going to say that I agree with Professor Chalermpoli's idea for discussing how we can empower older women, and especially when in the context of many Asian countries, they have been the younger generations have been more educated, and they know some skills. So it's really important, and also to have a life course force and genderless approach to empower women. It's really important to do this kind of empowerment from when women are still children, and they can grow old to be empowered. Once again, I thank you, the organizers, especially Professor Aris, and all the people who helped him for this wonderful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Fatemeh. Last but not least, can I once again welcome Prof. Manori? Yes, Professor Manori, do you have a few words to say to address the comments? Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. We had a very interesting presentations, and also we got the very good comments from the panelists, especially from Dr. Boyagoda, Dr. Yakandavala, and so others actually. So actually, when I'm listening, actually we have addressed most of the things that they have raised. So what actually it's a simple form, and the very essence, if I can say, what we have to move towards is the inclusive, targeted, and the sustainable solutions. And also, there are still the marginalized areas that we have not already addressed and found. So therefore, we need more research to address those issues. And as Dr. Yakandavala already stressed about the situation, elderly mental situation. So this is in fact big actually upcoming issue in Sri Lanka. So therefore, we need to actually have an integrated approach, and we have to already, inform the policymakers about those issues. And so then actually we have to think about those things, because in future, so although we are expecting living long and better lives, the thing is if we are getting a large number of the mentally ill or the women, so that will be issues. So therefore, those things should be addressed. And I think as a whole, as Professor Sunetra also mentioned, so we need to have a approach, we can get some, very good practices from the developed countries like Japan and Singapore, and we can apply those models to the other developing countries once. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Manori. There are a few more questions in the chat box, mainly on the certificates. You can access to the link. I believe after today's webinar, you can download the certificate from the folder. And perhaps one last question regarding the urgency to develop policies for the elderly in today's socio-economic condition. Perhaps Professor Manori can help to answer this question during your closing remarks. So with this, I would also like to thank the organizers for choosing me to be the moderator for today's session. So now we will move on to welcome Prof. Manori again to give the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. And actually, we had a very fruitful sessions, and I think all will agree with me that we had a very good presentation and the Q&A session. So sessions were both interesting and very valuable. Gender disparities in developing Asia are a major issue that we need to address together as a region to find lasting solutions. The good news is that there are strong examples in developed Asia, like Singapore and Japan, where they are successfully integrated gender equality. This example can be useful for other countries in the region that share similar social and cultural background. So, so therefore, thank you so much. Especially thank you so much for Professor Aris Ananta for organizing this very useful webinar, and actually inviting us, and also inviting the Department of Demography and the Population Association of Sri Lanka to organize this event. Thank you so much. And also a big thank also should go to the moderator, Lai Show, for guiding the session so well. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank for our co-speaker. So they did a very wonderful session, and also the panelists and those who have raised questions. And I also want to express my gratitude to the staff at the Demographic Institute at the University of Indonesia, the Department of Demography, the Population Association, and the Journal of Population Issues for collaboratively organize this event. And also the most importantly, I should thank for everyone who provided technical support to make this event a great success. Lastly, thank you to all the participants and contributors to the Q&A session. Your insights have truly enriched today's event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you in the next webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you again.
Bye-bye.